Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Coffee Break with Pat Sherlock. My name is Judith Newman, and proud graduate of the University of Winnipeg Class of 71 and current president of the University of Winnipeg Alumni Association. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you today to our first speaker series event of 2021. Thank you for taking a coffee break with us. The University of Winnipeg Alumni Association is pleased to co-host this event with the university's Faculty of Business and Economics. Two classes will be joining us today: Alex McMullen's Introduction to Business 2 class and Dr. Olia Brixina's Consumer Behavior class. So we will have a variety of participants, from current students to alumni and interested individuals. It's always a privilege to provide an opportunity to highlight our accomplished alumni and find out about their personal story, what influence the University of Winnipeg may have had on them, what inspired them and has led to their success, and what wisdom they can impart to present-day students. Today, we have the pleasure of chatting with Pat Sherlock, president of Canada Goose International, who studied business and management at the University of Winnipeg from 1992 to 1996. Though it is always preferable to meet in person, this electronic format does offer us the chance to bring together people from all around the world. Mr. Sherlock is joining us today from Zug, Switzerland, and we thank him for taking this time to be with us. At this time, I will now turn things over to Celeste, who will be our moderator for the remainder of the hour.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Celeste. I was a graduate of the University of Winnipeg in 2018. So just like you students in the virtual room today, I was in your seat not long ago, and I'm honored to be able to moderate this event today for us. And I want to welcome all of the alumni that were able to take some time off of their workday. And I really hope that you're able to put your emails aside and really join in with us fully. So a few housekeeping today. Our event will go as such, where we will have our keynote speaker, Pat Sherlock, and he will take the floor. Afterwards, we will have an open question and answer period that I will moderate. So to be able to answer any of your questions, I please ask that you put any of your questions in the Q&A box. If you hover below at your Zoom link on the bottom right, you will see the Q&A box. If you type your answer or your questions at any time in there, so that I will be able to answer them and ask them to our speaker afterwards. So that is the way that we will be having our Q&A session. So please feel free to use that at any moment, and I will be able to look back on them and answer them at the end of the keynote speech. Well, with excitement, I'm here to present to you our speaker today. Pat Sherlock is truly charismatic and an entrancing speaker. He started his journey here at U of W and studying business admin and management, like Judith mentioned, and received his bachelor degree while playing for the Westmen, more specifically in basketball. After graduating, he spent more than a decade at Labatt in multiple sales roles as well as multiple leadership roles. This eventually led him to be the national sales manager for New Balance Canada Inc. And this was before he joined Canada Goose in 2012. He joined as multiple senior roles and was the senior sales manager, the global sales manager for the Canada Goose. And then this is before he was able to take on his current role as president of Canada Goose International. And outside of his work, Pat loves to spend time with his family. He is a national certified basketball coach and coaches his two daughters' basketball teams. And what's most impressive is how, while being in Switzerland, Pat has been able to stay close to his Canadian roots. So he is currently a board member of Canada Basketball Foundation, and he is more specifically sits on the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. So today, throughout his speech, we'll see how important those topics in business are relevant today. And without further ado, I'm so excited to present to you all Pat Sherlock.
Thank you very much, Celeste, for the introduction. And listen, everyone, it's an absolute privilege and honor to be here, spending time with all of you. Of course, it'd be great to be there in person and interacting with all of you, but we're doing it virtually. And this is the new way of doing things these days. So I appreciate everyone who's put this together. And it's, like I said, it's a real honor to be here. I am actually, I know it's a coffee talk for you all. For myself, it's 5 p.m., so I'm drinking water, but enjoy your coffees. So, preparing for this moment today, I got to go back. So I got to kind of step out of the weeds, step out of the day-to-day that I'm pretty active in, and go back to my favorite decade of all, the 90s. I got to go back to the 90s and think about some amazing years that I had at U of W. And I put myself back in that headspace, just about to go into the world in 1996, and a little bit nervous, trying to figure out what did I have to offer the world, trying to figure things out. And I put myself in that headspace. And then I think about what students today must be going through. So on top of all those feelings and emotions, you have a global pandemic on top of that. You have all this disruption happening in the world, whether it's all these different institutions that are being really disrupted. And I can't imagine where your heads are at or what you guys are thinking. And I think it's really good too that we talk about what's going on in the world, how things have dramatically shifted, even in the last year. There's so much change and disruption happening in some areas. In the areas of inclusion and diversity, things are dramatically changing for the better, and it's long overdue, and it's great to see that happening. The way we work is really changing. There was the Industrial Revolution. There's all these different stages of how humans work, and now it's being completely disrupted. And we're really, every organization, depending on their industry, their culture, they're writing the script in terms of the new way of work. I mean, people are working from anywhere. The script is being written as we speak. So there's so much happening in the world, but I have to say, whatever your situation is, as you guys start your journey, there's so much opportunity out there as well. So I think what we'll do is I'm going to talk a bit about my journey since U of W, and then we'll come back and talk about some great experiences and some really great things that I took away from U of W. So we're going to go back in time. And again, guys, I'm really humbled and appreciate that you want to go on this journey with me, and I hope you can find some value out of it as well. So I'm going to take you back to 1996. And I had made the decision to move to Vancouver and stay on a friend of a friend's couch. And back then, when you looked for a job, you got out the newspaper and looked for a job. So I was doing that kind of couch hopping and was roofing in Whistler on the weekends. So if anyone has a leaky roof in Whistler, I may have had something to do with that. So that's where I sort of got started. And during the summer, while I was at school, I was doing different jobs, working for Pepsi, working on the railroad. I spent a lot of time doing industrial work on the railroad back home in Sudbury. And I had an opportunity to work for my first official job, was at a railroad company based in Vancouver. And I thought, this is great. I interviewed well, I got the job, and off I went. And it was not a good fit for me. So it was my first big job. I got an apartment, got a car. I was ready to start my professional career. And a few months in, I got fired. So there's my big inspirational moment. I actually got fired on my first job. And it was tough. And I remember the drive home was one of the toughest drives home, toughest drives I've ever had, being so excited and so optimistic about the future, then getting fired in my first job. But it was also the best thing that ever happened to me. I just wasn't a fit. And for some people, that may be their fit. That may be something they really excel in and they're really passionate about. But for me, it wasn't the right fit. And I learned a really hard lesson early on in my professional career. So I had to recalibrate a bit and figure out what I was going to do, how I was going to survive and pay for things. I ended up working part-time for the same agency that it was called S&MG as the agency. It's now called Mosaic. You may be familiar with Mosaic. They also had Cantel, which was a cell phone company a long time ago. Those of you may know Cantel. And they had a cell phone activation campaign. So they were looking for part-time people, part-time students. So I did that. And I started selling cell phones outside of Radio Shack with this aqua green kind of vest and a clip-on tie. And that was what I did. It was tough going for a while. It wasn't a lot of money. I struggled quite a bit. And then we had our first sales meeting. There were 72 representatives in British Columbia. We had our first meeting, and they had all of the people ranked, all the 72 of us ranked, and I saw I was somewhere in the middle in terms of how many phones we sold. And that moment kind of triggered something in me and lit a fire that I think, you know, still burns today. And that was that I really wanted to be proud of my body of work, of what I wanted to be proud of what I did. And I wanted to do much, much better. And so I committed myself to really selling a lot of phones. You know, it's 1997. Why not sell a lot of phones? And I was able to sell quite a bit. I made up my own business cards. I was handing them out to people, whether I was at McDonald's, I'd hand out cards, wherever I went. I had my home phone number on the business card, which drove my roommates a little crazy. But I ended up selling a lot of phones. And and ended up #1 in the province for phone activations. And it was a good life lesson for me. And I was able to, during that time, I'd always wanted to work in the beer business, but I could never get in. I applied, I dropped off resumes. You really have to know someone to get these roles sometimes. And Labatt's was one of the clients of this same agency. And they said, hey, listen, there's this job in Prince George, which is about 8 hours north of Vancouver. It's a contract position. Would you be interested? I'm like, yeah, I'll take it. So next, you know, I was in a minivan driving up to Prince George to start my new adventure. It was an interesting time. It was my first real job. Since the railroad company, this was my first real, okay, I'm really going to make this work. And I remember, funny story, but I had about 2 weeks before I get my first paycheck, and I didn't have any money. So I remember down the last couple of days left of that, before my paycheck came in, I only had a Bay card. So I went to the Bay and bought a couple of gift baskets of crackers and cheese and jam, and I lived on that for a couple of days before I could really have that first paycheck and have a proper celebration. So, you know, 10 years at a company like Labatt was incredible. Lots of good foundational learning, and I was able to bring a lot of things that I learned at U of W and bring it to life at Labatt's. And I think it was a real testament to the right fit. My first boss, Kelly Hayworth, was you know, in the beer business in Northern BC. She was my first boss, and she was amazing. She's gone on to have a great career, and she's running like Middle East or Africa for Diageo. She's doing fantastic. But it was really good foundational learning with a big global company like Labatt's, and I enjoyed a really good run in Prince George, then to Vancouver, then to Calgary, and then to eventually the head office in Toronto. So that was a lot of fun. After that, I was approached by a German beer company, a privately owned company, and there was a nice title, managing director, and quite a bit more money. And so I'm like, yeah, of course I'm going to take this. And I made that decision, and it turned out to be the wrong decision. I was there for a year, and I felt like, well, I think I made this decision based on all the wrong things, and that was a good life lesson for me. And I really had to think about, what do I want to do? What do I enjoy? What am I passionate about? And I'd always also want to get into the sporting goods business. And fortunately, someone I knew from Labatt's was at New Balance Canada. I had an opportunity to interview, and I took that opportunity at New Balance. I had to take a pretty significant haircut in terms of salary. Obviously, I didn't have the title anymore of managing director. I was selling again. And I was actually quite happy to do that, because it was something that I really wanted, an industry I really wanted to be in. I was working with a lot of like-minded people, and I had 5 incredible years at New Balance in different capacities. I was also able to work with a lot of entrepreneurs, both in the beer industry and the footwear industry with Sporting Life, with New Balance. Sporting Life was one of our great customers. I do have to say that in Winnipeg, Brian Sharfstein of Canadian Footwear was a great client of ours, and one of the best people I ever worked with as a client. And it's fun to call him out because he's a Winnipegger, and he's amazing in so many ways, both personal and professional. All that said, I learned a lot at my time at New Balance, privately owned company. Probably one of the highlights of my time at New Balance that I thought I'd share with everyone, I think it's relevant, is I got to spend a week with the founder of New Balance. His name is Jim Davis. Really good human being. Jim, we took his jet with a few other executives, and we hopped all across Canada. And I was able to spend time with this founder. And, you know, if anyone knows, like there's Phil Knight of Nike, who wrote, you know, everyone's heard of Phil Knight. He wrote Shoe Dog. There's a few titans in the industry. Jim Davis is certainly one of them, the founder of New Balance. So I got this time with him, not me directly, but a group of us. And I got to really see Jim in action. And what was most impressive about Jim during this time is how he treated everybody. I mean, cab drivers, hotel clerks. We go to a store, he'd go right to the stock room and talk to everyone there and be so engaged and cared so much about not just the decision makers or the key stakeholders. He genuinely cared about everybody. And he was such a humble, he is such a humble person and a humble leader, despite all his success and this billion-dollar company that he's built. It was the humanity that really impressed me the most. And I think the highlight of that trip for me was a moment in Winnipeg, actually. We were in Winnipeg on that adventure, and we were taking we were in the car going into the area where the private jet was, and there was a few pylons that had to be moved. And our sales rep for the Manitoba region, he was quite older, close to retirement. And he kind of slowly got up to do that. I'm like, Bob, I got it. And I went around and I moved all these pylons and came back in the car. And that's the first time Jim really said anything to me that whole trip, because there was a few executives there. He said, great job, because that meant so much to him. It wasn't about all the business, of course, is important. All these other things are important, but it's how you treat other people that really impressed me the most about Jim that week. So we ended up having a couple of days left, and I spent a lot of time with him. But I really, really took that away from that trip, and I did want to take a chance to share that with you guys as well. So had 5 incredible years at New Balance, and then this amazing opportunity happened with Canada Goose, and it really is about being at the right place at the right time. And Canada Goose, I started to see these jackets popping up all over Toronto. I had interviewed for the Canadian sales director role. About 30 interviews later, I finally had the opportunity to take on the position. And since then, it's just been an incredible journey that I'm happy to talk about and share many stories and adventures with Canada Goose. I think the biggest thing is being able to represent a little piece of Canada that's made in Canada all around the world has been an incredible privilege, whether it's Harrods in London or our partners in Japan, or you name it, different partners, different retailers, just to be able to represent Canada and a Canadian company and feel so proud about it has been a real honor. So that's a great highlight. I think Danny Reese, our CEO, has built something really special that we can all be proud of as Canadians. And I think the coolest thing is how the brand, seeing this brand resonate in all pockets of the world. It's really incredible to see. And I think the personality of Canadians shows up in our product, which is neat. And I think the biggest thing about this current role that I'm in is hiring and building a team of Europeans and even people from outside of Europe, but building an international team and getting them excited about Canadian culture. We just had we did a whole interview today. Polar Bears International is coming up. Polar Bears International Day is coming up February 27th. So we did a whole Polar Bears International theme. It's all about Churchill and our friends at Polar Bears International. And they're just fascinated by what's in literally your backyard up in Churchill. I mean, there's so many incredible stories about Canada that we get to share with the world. So I'm happy to talk about all of those adventures at Canada Goose. I think probably one of the biggest highlights from a business perspective has been us going public, which we did a few years back. And in my capacity as the head of global sales, I got to participate in the whole journey of going public. When you have the analyst day, when you go to the New York Stock Exchange, it's all been a real incredible journey. In fact, the analyst day kind of felt a bit like the Shark Tank. If you've ever watched that show, it was like a real live version where the stakes are really, really big. So there's been lots of great adventures there, but I think what I'm most proud of is what this company stands for and some of the things we're up to. So that really is, in a nutshell, my story and my journey. And I think, and again, I appreciate you guys just listening to that. And I hope that there's other things I'd love to share with you, but I think maybe Celeste, we can do a bit of Q&A, or we can have a bit of a chat. I think you're muted.
There you go. I'm muted. Thank you so much, Pat. So first of all, like, I think that what we're interested about, and I think your journey is incredible. And honestly, like, I know that you were born in Sudbury. So what brought you really to the University of Winnipeg?
So I came to play basketball. So I just as a correction from the opening, I did go to Carleton first. I transferred from Carleton University and went here from 94 to 95. 94 to 96. And I remember when Coach Bill Wedlake had invited me to come over, and another friend of mine was actually already playing that season. So Bill had invited me to come out. I'd sent him some videos. And so I had basically a weekend to prove my worth and make the Winnipeg Westman team. So I was like, the stakes were pretty high for this week. I really had to have my game on.
Were they better than the Carleton team at the time?
Way better. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Way better. I didn't make a difference on either team, just for the record, but yes, the Westmen were much better. In fact, when I was there, we were #1 in the country. Again, not because of me, but we were #1 in the country, #2 on campus, because our women's team, as you know, our women's team was setting incredible records and really, lighting the world on fire with all their success under Coach Tom Kendall. So I basically had a weekend to make the team, and I had to go in a 3-on-3 tournament. I think it was in Polo Park parking lot. We had a 3-on-3 tournament. And I'm like, oh, I guess I'm in a 3-on-3 tournament. But the people that I was on the two other individuals on my team, one was a gentleman named Todd McCullough. So if anyone knows, any basketball fans out there, Todd McCullough is from Winnipeg, ended up playing for the Huskies, and then ended up playing for the 76ers and the Nets of the NBA, and had a really good run there. So I had a 7-footer, which helped. And then the other person I was teamed up with was Kirby Shep, who is an incredibly successful basketball coach and amazing human being who's had a really good run. He's also very involved in Canada basketball now and had a lot of success. So I had these two kind of superstars, and they were great. Like, I see that Kirby for the win. Kirby was awesome. Todd McCullough was great. So I think they certainly helped. If you have a weekend to make a team, you want those guys on your team for sure, in your 3-on-3 team. So Perfect. That's why I came out. But of course, obviously, when I got here, after my experience at Pepsi and as a summer job doing merchandising, working with different entrepreneurs, I'm like, I can't wait to start business school and to do business, doing the business program at University of Winnipeg. I transferred out of communications to business, and really enjoyed a lot of my courses and the faculty at UW.
Awesome. And how did this really shape your future? Did UW play a big role in how you achieved your success today?
Absolutely. I think there's a couple of things that, and it's funny because you appreciate things as you get older. Right. I was lucky enough to be surrounded with a lot of really good adults. And there was a real emphasis on character at the time. And I don't think I appreciated it at the time, but it's certainly something I've learned to appreciate over the time in terms of what they were trying to instill in myself and my friends, and teammates, and that sort of thing. I will say this about Bill Wedlake. He ran the program like a business. So we'd be sitting in a boardroom. It just wasn't like you go in the change room, you go to practice. We met in the boardroom, and he treated it like a business. And there were different updates. We watched tape, you had your binder, you had to know your stuff, you learned how to speak in a formal business setting. Those sort of things I took for granted then, but it does prepare you for real life. So I really appreciated that. I certainly appreciated the intimacy of U of W, the accessibility to the professors, the faculty, the alumni was really strong. Some of my favorite courses, I remember there's courses around organizational excellence, where there was a lot of, even back then, God, it feels like a long time ago, but even back then, there was a lot of testing where you learn your own strengths and weaknesses. And I skewed a little more on the softer skills, needed a little more work on the technical things. But that level of self-awareness being built at an early stage of my career, or pre-career, certainly helped. Social psychology is by far my most favorite course I ever took at UW. I thought there was some really, I'm assuming you still might have some version of that course. social psych was like, I just found that fascinating. I love that course. So there's a lot of things that I really took out of it. I think one other thing, if anyone knows, I don't mean to be calling out all those names, but I'm back in that time. So these people keep coming up to me. But Cal Botterill, who's the father of Jennifer Botterill, who's a very famous hockey player and broadcaster, sports broadcaster. He was the sports psychology professor, and we did some really amazing things with him that also really applied to the business world as well. So I feel like there was a lot of good, as I say, adults really instilling a lot of character and professionalism at an early stage of life that I learned to appreciate over time.
Right. And also, not to mention, you also met your wife at University of Winnipeg. So that was.
Yes, I was going to bring that up.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I was, because you were going to ask me some of my highlights, and that was good. I had that first as my highlight.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Ruined the moment.
No, it's okay.
That's
I had
exciting.
It's first on my list. But yes, I did meet my wife, Celicia, near the end. It was definitely near the end of my time there, but we met near the escalators. And
the famous escalators. They're still there.
I'm sure there's many
They're
couples.
still there. Yeah, I'm sure. Well, we're getting a lot of questions here, so I'll dive into a few here. So one is from Alexandra McMullen, and she is actually a professor. And she said, if there's one piece of advice that would give to your 20-year-old self, what would that be?
Oh, that's a good one. Get a haircut. Get a better haircut. No, I'm just joking. I think if I could go back in time and give myself some advice, and it would be at 20 years old, I would say any decision I've ever made based on ego or pride, or any decision or action I've done around those things have always been the wrong decision. I mean, there's a book out there, Ego is the Enemy. I forget the author, but
yeah,
ego is certainly the enemy. And I think one thing that I've learned to do over time, and I'm sure many of us in the business world can relate to this, or just in the world in general, is you get caught up in one of those email cycles back and forth, and you got to win. Like, you got to win this argument and make your point. No one wins. And what I've started to do is, in those situations that consume a lot of time and waste a lot of energy and distract from things that are more important, is I'll get all that energy out and I'll send an email to myself. And then I'll go back to that email 30 minutes later and go, that is a terrible email, because your headspace in that moment is consumed with pride, ego, all those negative things.
Right.
And then there's a sense of clarity you get when you take a moment and then rethink things. So the discipline around not letting your ego or your pride get the best of you or influence your decisions, I think, and harness more of that humility is advice I would have given myself, not just 20, but throughout my 20s and beyond, probably. That's
advice. Definitely a good advice I could take as well.
But thank you for that question.
Yeah. So we have another question here. Good morning, Pat. Story is very inspiring. Any tips to current students on career success? This would be wonderful to hear from you. Yeah.
So there's a couple of things. I think I'll say this. I think that there's really three things. Listen, there's people that are making a lot of money, writing a lot of really compelling books, and are probably a lot better at this than I am. So this is quite raw. But it's my own personal experience. And I think that there's really three things to keep in mind for success, or to be successful, to shoot for. And we're all going to have our own journeys. The first one is just be a good human, like just be nice to people. And I think that matters now more than ever. What's going on in the world? We're stuck in these computers all day, in these virtual boxes. We don't know what's going on with our personal lives. So just really being good to each other and being a nice human being is huge. Second one is, you got to work hard, right? Like, you got to work hard. And there's no way around that. And the third one is, and it's just a reality, if you're going to be successful, you have to develop the competency to do that. And I think what kind of underpins all three of those things is that if you do something you like, or you work in an industry or an organization you're really passionate about, it's a lot easier to spend all that time investing in being competent. It's a lot easier to spend all that time working really hard, and you're going to be working with more like-minded people. So being nice and being good to others working really hard and investing the time to become competent. You don't have to naturally be competent, you have to work at that, but it comes. It's a lot easier to do all those things if you're actually doing what you really enjoy. So my advice is, you know, not unlike if I can give anyone any feedback, it's like, you know, if it's a little bit less money or it's less money, but it's something you really enjoy doing, or you really like the people there, go for it. It'll work itself out, because if you're taking something just for a title or just for a salary, that's not sustainable. And that organization is not getting the best of you, and you're not giving the best of yourself. So I know it's easy for me to say now at this stage of my career, but it really is, I think, something that I want to pass along.
Great. Okay, we have another question more about, for students who have bitten the entrepreneur bug, do you have any advice for them? So any advice to students trying to get into business today?
Yeah, I have a tremendous amount of respect for you, whoever you are. I've been on the other side of entrepreneurs my whole life in multiple industries, whether I was working with pub owners, nightclub owners, you name it, beer store owners, in the footwear business, founders, independent guys like I mentioned, Brian Sharpstein, and even with Canada Goose, I work with entrepreneurs all the time. In fact, my boss is an entrepreneur. And there is a certain wiring you need to have with entrepreneurs. And you have to have the audacity to believe that whatever you're doing, it's going to work. And it's the toughest job in the world. I think the trap for a lot of people who want to be an entrepreneur is that they see all the good stuff. They see the shiny independence. And man, like if that business, you are married to that business. You don't go on holidays. You don't get that paycheck every 2 weeks. You eat what you kill. And I have such tremendous respect for any entrepreneur. Really be ready for it. Make sure you've created the personal life, the support network you need to really commit to be successful, because it's tough. It can be very rewarding, but it's high risk, high reward. And sometimes the reward isn't even that much, depending on what it is you're doing. Like anyone that's going into opening a family restaurant, like family restaurants. I mean, all these independent, especially now, that's what's going on. Depending on what you're going into, you better be really committed. Make sure you've got your resources lined up. Make sure you build a support network around you that will support you through this unconditionally, and don't give up. Because I mean, and I've seen all sorts of different entrepreneurs. I've been very lucky. I think others on Canada Goose have been very lucky to experience success without all the risk.
Right.
Where we've been very lucky in that sense. Where I kudos to any entrepreneur. I'd give you a virtual hug. Any entrepreneur out there, and I wish you all the best, because you guys are amazing.
Okay, great. So I'm going to answer 2 other questions that are more relating to you, your journey, and your advice, and then we'll move on to some Canada Goose questions that people have. So one, we have, were you a shy or introverted person? If so, was it difficult to find success in the business world with that personality trait?
I think the business success is about being authentic. So whether you're shy, outgoing, there's no like box of a profile you need to be successful. You need to be yourself. You need to be your best self. So I am a bit of an introvert. I do like my own time. So I do obviously I like this sort of thing. I like the interaction, and I love a good chuckle here and there. But I also like my downtime. So I don't think there's any specific type of personality. I think it's you at your best, and you at your authentic self is what really makes you successful and helps you connect with others.
Awesome. And then we have one more. I firmly believe in learning through failure. What is the biggest mistake you've made, and what did you learn from it? And he said, apologies if that question is too direct. I'm a sales manager after all, so it's kind of my thing.
Ah, a great question.
And he's actually on our alumni committee for faculty, Matt.
Yeah.
So what's your biggest mistake you've made, and what did you learn from it?
Sorry, who was it? It's from
Matt.
Oh, yeah, Matt. Hey, Matt, that's a great question. I gotta be careful with this one. I've made a lot. In fact, I think the most value that I bring to the organization or whatever I'm doing is based on all the mistakes. So I think I can, okay, sure, I'll do this one. I'll share this one with you. When I was leaving Vancouver to move to Calgary when I was at Labatt's, Kokanee, as many of us know Kokanee back home, I had this brilliant idea to do the Kokanee free ride, which was we got like a souped up kind of limo van, and it was all decked out with like carpet inside and a VHS video playing. You watch Slapshot on there. And what we did is we rented this, and we rented a condo up in Whistler, and basically we did a draw where you could win the free ride up to Whistler. And it was a great example of having a really good idea, but the execution was a lawsuit waiting to happen. And I was pretty hands-on in terms of like just executing the thing. Like I was driving the thing. I was like coordinating with different cleaners to clean up the condo. And it was a train wreck. And I think that the legal department and I had some colorful conversations after that. But it was early days in my career. But man, I learned that when you're taking this stuff on, you better be dialed. Like it's one thing to have an idea, you better execute well and expect the worst things to happen. I literally thought, this is great. It's just going to magically come together and people are going to have a great time. I didn't think about all the due diligence that was required, and I learned the hard way. Yeah, so it's a great question. I haven't thought about it. I've never told that story, but Matt,
thanks for sharing it.
Matt.
It's for being an open book.
Well,
Okay, so next question we have. Two people actually asked this. What, in your opinion, makes Canada Goose so successful as a brand?
It's interesting. As the brand it's like a living organism. I mean, it's evolving. It's this living thing. I think that what's made the brand successful is the ability for the product and the messaging to really connect. There is something unique about a product that's authentic. You want the best watches in the world, you go to Switzerland and you get a watch. Switzerland makes the best watches in the world. Canada should make the best parkas in the world. And Danny had that insight way back then when all the manufacturing was going overseas. He's like, no, this is what actually makes us cool. This is made in Canada. It's authentic, and we're going to charge a little bit more, but it's made by Canadians in Canada. I think the spirit of that lives on. I think what's cool is that we still have this ability to be a function first brand that can play in the fashion space. We're not trying to be fashionable. We just make great stuff that works. And so I often compare the brand to like a Dyson vacuum. They look pretty cool, but they work really, really well. So I think that's been one of the keys to success is the functionality that you can put that on. And I hope, you guys have had a chance, some of you, to put on a jacket in those cold Winnipeg winters, because it really does work.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. So next question, how come the Canada Goose stock is traded at the NYCE instead of the TCE?
It's on both.
Oh, great. Good to know.
Yeah.
Perfect.
It's on the Toronto Stock Exchange as well.
Awesome. Okay, next question. In your opinion, Pat, what makes Canada Goose so successful, and what would you recommend to the students as their best strategy to link the things they are learning in their classes to their careers and real life in business situations?
Okay, so the question is...
The question is, what would you recommend to the students as a best strategy to link in their classes to careers and life?
Class to real life.
Yeah.
Exactly what we're doing today. This kind of stuff is fantastic. I love LinkedIn. I think it's an incredible resource. It is like like I said, I was flipping through newspapers looking for a job when I left UW, but I mean, it's full of so many resources, and I would get really comfortable with that. But having real life conversations about real things, this is a great forum for that, because I think you can learn a lot in a classroom, and it's very, very helpful. But you also need to get out there and experience things. However you're involved in a community, could be a family dinner table conversation, whatever it is, you got to get those reps in. You gotta have these conversations and have a curiosity about business, and always be looking to apply that to day-to-day life. But I think formal settings like this are a good help. I think there's all sorts of great free knowledge and information on LinkedIn. If you guys don't have a profile, get it up and get on there because it's full of good stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Thank you. So next question, based on the Canada Goose vision and mission statement, would you say that over the life of the brand that you've been able to achieve that vision as a company? What do you think the key was to achieving the vision?
Well, our purpose is to, to keep the earth cold and the people on it warm. We're constantly evolving, but we stay true to our roots. I want to, can you ask the question again?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So do you believe that Canada Goose have been able to achieve their vision? And what was the key to achieving the vision?
Yes, but it's like an infinite race. It never ends, right? Like, so there's never a goalpost. There's been certainly moments where like, we did it. What about next month? Or what about next fiscal year? We're already rendering a new fiscal year now. Our Q3 results came out. We have Q4 results coming up. We're starting our new fiscal year, April 1st. We're quite happy with how this year's gone, but we've got a month left before the fiscal year's up, but we're already we're so busy planning for next fiscal and beyond. We don't have a stop. We don't have a chance to go, yeah, we did it. So it's kind of this perpetual thing that's always in motion. It's very fluid. But I think if I look back over 8.5 years, or even the life of the company, certainly there's been a lot of successes. And I think the key to that has been the culture that's evolved out of this organization. And I think the caliber of people that come in and that are part of this. And everyone that comes into this organization is part of this. Doesn't matter how long you've been, you just got to care. If you care, that's all that matters. Doesn't matter if it's been a day or 15 years. You just got to care. And I think that kind of passion that's like deeply rooted has been a big factor in our success.
Okay, so you mentioned that as your fiscal year is ending and you're starting a new one, let's talk about how Canada Goose has been impacted by the global pandemic, and how has the company changed or responded to that disruption?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think very relevant to all sorts of businesses today. And I think the biggest thing for us has been to really double down on our people and our culture, and really staying engaged. It's tough being in your home office all day or being on a computer all day. You don't have that interaction like you used to, those touch points. So I think keeping people focused and engaged and really caring for our people has been the number one priority for us as a business. And it's relevant now more than ever. The second thing we've done is we've adapted our business model. We've had store closures around the world. You can imagine the complexity of stores opening, stores closing. And so, wholesalers, our wholesale partners have also gone through the same sort of disruption. So it's been this kind of crazy open, close, open, closed. What about this market? And that's amplified even more in Europe, where you have all these different countries and regulations that you're trying to juggle as well. So I think, in particular, we've had great success in shifting our entire model to e-commerce. If e-commerce has been, we've been quite aggressive over the years on e-commerce, but we've really doubled down this year and seen some incredible results on e-com, which has helped offset some of the concerns in the brick and mortar space. But I got to tell you, the biggest thing too for us has been our ability to connect with local consumers. I think people aren't traveling. In many ways, the Chinese consumer helps fuel the industry. In many ways, they're not traveling. They're in China, and among other regions of the world. People from the Middle East travel quite a bit, and that's all been disrupted. Everyone is staying local, so it really puts a test on brands in terms of how connected are to your local consumer base. And we're quite happy with how that's gone as well across the business. In particular for Europe, we're really quite happy with that.
Good.
Sorry, one last thing. Last thing we did. We've also focused our manufacturing to PPE, for protective medical wear for the industry. So we've been quite active with that across Canada for different groups in Canada and the US.
Right. So I'm gonna move on to this one where it's like, would you please comment on the company's plans and strategies in taking care of the environment? Kind of goes along the same vein.
Yep. So if you can go on our website, I would encourage anyone because I want to make sure that I'm doing this justice. Go to our website, look at our sustainability initiative, look what we're doing. There's some very aggressive goals for zero carbon emissions by 2025. That's scope 1 and 2. It's in there, and it's very aggressive in terms of what we're doing and our commitment to sustainability, to the environment. We're making sustainable garments. We launched our standard parka, which is a fully sustainable jacket this year, and it's becoming standardized across the network. Our sourcing, we're very transparent about our sourcing, our uses of materials. I'll also say that, as it relates to fur, we are trying, and we know that consumers have different tastes, different viewpoints. And we've always used, we have a very function first brand. So we are very function first. Fur is used to protect the face in extreme environments. But we understand that people have different tastes and different viewpoints. So what we started doing this year is we're now introducing reclaimed fur into our supply chain. So by 2022, we're going to be using only reclaimed fur that already exists out in the network, not new fur. So we are making we're making a significant move in this area. I'm very proud of this. And I want to make sure that I do justice. And if you guys really care, go check out our sustainability report. It's full of actions. It's very transparent. And I'm very proud of what the organization is committed to on this front. I want to make sure that I'm doing it justice. So I really defer all of you to check it out.
Thank you. Thank you for being so transparent with us here today. We really appreciate that. So I'm going to move on to another question. I've seen a few influencers promoting Canada Goose on YouTube and Instagram, such as Alex Costa. My question is, how effective are these promotions? I do know they work, but I want to know how well. And this is an anonymous question, so I can't even tell you who asked it.
Thank you, Anonymous. I have to say, influencers are significant. They're a major factor in legitimizing product, introducing product, getting it to an audience in a very authentic way. So we do have committed, it's in our marketing plans to work with influencers that align to the values of the brand and can bring it across in a very authentic way. So yes, I don't know that specific influencer. Sorry, my daughters probably do, but I don't. But I know that the marketing team is very much focused and sees the value in working with influencers.
Yeah, it's definitely taken off, I feel, now more than ever in our virtual world. So John Lacko says, thanks for your time. I'm a young entrepreneur who's just passed the 10-year anniversary, but still have underestimated the weight of managing staff. Do you feel Gen Z have a different style of communicating? How do you draw the line between friendship and camaraderie with the staff you manage? What about clients? Do you act with the same principles and ethics in mind with business relationships as you do with personal? So that's a loaded question.
That's a great
so let's
question,
break it down. First of all,
that's a great question.
Yeah. Do you feel Gen Z have a different style of communicating?
Yes, I think there's a fundamental. I think there's a bit of a millennial Gen Z sort of thing going on. The old side part skinny jean thing that's all over TikTok these days. But yes, I think that the Gen Zers have a different communication style. I think one thing to keep in mind as an entrepreneur, I'm assuming, is it Mark, you said?
So John.
Sorry, John. I think being the owner of the company, being an entrepreneur, I'm assuming it is your business, you have to understand that they may not be as motivated as you. They're employees, you are the owner, right? So we have to, I think, and I don't know you, I don't know your business. I have a lot of questions for you as well. But I think that keep in mind, their motivation may be a little bit different than yours, being the owner. So that's something to keep in mind. In terms of, I think the other question was, how do you change your value system for your clients?
Yeah, it was, how do you draw the line between friendship and camaraderie with the staff? And then with the clients as well. So it's a twofold question.
Yeah, my personal experience with friendship and staff, that is a really great question. And I think that my personal experience over my time, and again, there's no wrong or right answer. You're your own individual. I don't know anyone involved. I've made a point in my personal journey to keep a bit of distance, to keep it a little more formal. Maybe I'm old school, but I think, there's certainly people that are friends to this day, and we met in a professional capacity and became friends afterwards. I make a point of keeping my social media, like my friends and my business, quite separate. That's always a choice I've made. And I'm just more comfortable with that. As I leave a situation, or if they leave the formal capacities ends, then if there's a friendship there, there's a friendship there, and then you can have it without all the interference of business. Because I can tell you, business and friendships gets a bit messy sometimes.
Definitely. And
Yeah.
the last part of his question, do you act with the same principles and ethics in mind with your business relationships as well as your personal?
I'd like to think so. I think we'd all like to think so. I think the reality is you put on a bit of a different face when you go to work than when you were in your personal life. Like I'm probably a little more professional right now than I will be this weekend when I'm having a few beers with my friends, right? That's just the reality. So, but I think that there's something foundational in you that is consistent. But I think, my behavior is certainly probably a little bit different this weekend than it is right now, as an example. I hope that answered your question, John. Those are really good questions. And Celeste, if you want to have us talk further, I'm happy to help out, because I want to make sure
Yeah, we have
seven. I want to help you as much as I can.
We have 7 questions to roll through still. So we have 2 about the same role, about the same kind of vein. So one, we have, can you talk about the role of Winnipeg and Manitoba in Canada Goose operations and more generally? And then someone else had asked how is Manitoba important to Canada Goose? So both of those questions can kind of be amalgamated in one.
So Manitoba is a hub of manufacturing for Canada Goose. I can tell you that. I've been there a few times at the facilities. We are literally building the infrastructure. We just built a new plant there. We're putting in new technologies. We're doing some great lightweight down products that are being made out of there. The caliber, the quality, the efficiency that's coming out of those facilities is incredible. And you guys should feel really proud about what's going around the world from those facilities. But we're literally like, there's floors, like there's a floor dedicated just to training people to have that skill set. This is not like, this is a skill in itself. It's craftsmanship. So we're literally training people to come into the facilities and learn how to sew and teach them that skill. So we should all feel very proud about what we're doing there. And the province of Manitoba has been really supportive.
Yeah, amazing. It is so great to have a product being made here in Winnipeg and then distributed on an international level. So a few last questions here. How, in your opinion, how can international students find options in Canada, and how can they use their diverse skills here in the Canadian market?
This is a great question, because I know I touched on it a bit earlier, but there's a massive shift happening in the world. And I just want to talk about diversity for a second, because I think there's sometimes the conversations around diversity. I know this may not be directly related, but it's somewhat related. I just want to say this, and then I'll get more back to the question. Things are fundamentally changing, and it's long overdue. And sometimes diversity, inclusion, those can be difficult conversations, but it shouldn't be. We should embrace these conversations. And there's a great quote that I want to share that kind of puts things in perspective. It's from George Dye. He's University of Toronto professor. And it goes like this: inclusion isn't about bringing people into what already exists. It's about creating something new, a new place, a better place for everybody. And I think people that are lucky enough, as I am, or privileged enough to be where I'm at, have to play an active role in creating that new space. And I know me of all people is up here talking about diversity. I know it sounds kind of strange, but I think we have to play an active role in this and create a place that's better for everyone, so everyone has these opportunities. And it's not just, these are just words. There's a fundamental shift happening in the world to create more opportunities for everybody. So in terms, and I don't know if that answers the question, but I did want to share that with everyone, because it's very relevant, and it's happening, and it's real, and it's long overdue. As far as the question about what can an international student do to
find success in the Canadian market, like career-wise?
Yeah, I think it depends on a lot of things, right? I mean, success is what you make of it. It takes a lot of grit. It takes a lot of passion, takes a lot of fire, takes a little bit of luck, but you can create that too. And I think it all depends on what you have to offer and what you're putting out there. But I wish you all the luck, and I hope you're bringing something that people really want, and you can create that.
Yeah. So we have a few, we have 6 questions left, so we probably are going to have to run out of time. But one question is, someone is a student athlete and would love to hear a funny story about your time playing at U of W. And he thinks I can both agree some of life's funniest moments occur during our university sports year. And this is another different Matt asking this question.
Hey, Matt. My filter's on. I think that we've had a couple, geez, I'm trying to think of a good one. I could tell you that I had a lot of really good times as a student athlete. Wise Guys, anyone know Wise Guys? The bar, no? Okay.
I'm not familiar. Maybe other people are. If you check
Roxy was the other nightclub. That's what we named our dog after, the Roxy nightclub.
Oh, that's funny.
Also way back when. In terms of really funny stories, my God, there's just a lot. There's a lot of really goofy stories. I think that I have a couple with a good friend, not a good friend, someone that I'm close with and keep in contact with, and that's Kevin Chief, who's an MLA, and he's done amazing things for the province and for the community up there. I've got a lot of good memories with him. In terms of silly ones, I'm sorry, I want to be very careful about what I say. And they're all involving road trips and a lot of stupidness on the bus.
Yeah.
The bus trips to Regina, to Brandon. We used to have battles with the Brandon Bobcats and get into all sort of nonsense with those guys after the games. I mean, it's full of good memories. Yeah, I got to be careful because
yeah, definitely. I know what can go on in those locker rooms after school, after class is done. And
like I said, we were number one in the country, number 2 on campus.
Yeah, the women's team did take that precedent. And last but not least, is that plant behind you real? Someone's genuinely curious. It's a real plant. You take care of it. Or does someone water it for you?
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Well, honestly, Pat, thank you so much for joining us here today. I really think that you are such an engaging speaker, really open, honest about all topics, especially during this whole talk. Thanks on behalf of Hugh Grant, the Dean of the Faculty, on behalf of the Dean's Office, especially Rachel and Adam. I know we really appreciate your time here today. I also have a few other thanks to people that kind of helped us behind the scenes that you didn't see here today. Bryce, our technician from the University of Winnipeg. We have Helen from the U of W Alumni Affairs that helped. Judith with the U of W Alumni Association. Thank you so much for all of your time and effort that you put into this outside of what you see here today. Thanks to the events team of the Faculty of Business Alumni Association, Jeff and Devin, that joined me with having questions prepared and really enjoying bringing Pat to us today. And definitely thank you to all the faculty, students, alumni who have been able to join us today. And most importantly, Pat, thanks so much for joining us. Everyone, I'm sorry if we weren't able to get to your questions. There was 5 left, and
Celeste, if you can email me the questions, I'm happy to respond to email.
Great. Yeah, definitely. I can definitely email the questions and have those answered for you guys. Some of them are anonymous, so we might just have to broadcast the questions to our email chain that we did bring this event to. But we really just thank you for your time, Pat, and hope that you're able to one day come to Winnipeg and meet us all in person when it's safe to do so.
Sooner than later. Let's hope.
Yeah.
Let's hope soon. Like I said, it's my second home. I got married in Winnipeg. I go there all the time. I have family in Winnipeg, and that's my home. So my other home.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for your time. And again, on behalf of the Dean's Office and the faculty and all the students and the alumni here today, we really appreciated your talk.
Likewise. Thank you, everyone, and be safe out there. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.